Hi, all. It's Jan of the Jan Files. I hope you are well today, and I hope that you will also sign up for my YouTube channel. I would really appreciate the support. So I'm going to talk about a couple things today, try to keep this succinct. I'm going to talk just briefly about the draft, Epstein, and then the war in Iran. So the draft, I know a lot of people are concerned. I have a lot of friends who were parents of teenagers just like me, and they are very concerned about the fact that, oh my God, my son might end up being drafted, going to war, etc. It's a very real fear, and I don't know I can really assuage it, but I can at least talk about a little bit of where this has been in terms of conversations and overall conversations, and where I think it's not going. So first of all, the draft has been around since Revolutionary War. We drafted people. We then went to again and picked it up again in World War I, World War II, Korea, and of course Vietnam. And in 1973, Richard Nixon ended the draft. So what we do now have is some sort of selective service where kids are registered, but it's nothing like the draft, although obviously it has a database. But the problem with the draft is that it's never actually been what it was supposed to be, which was an equalizer in terms of who went to war, whose kids went to war, whose kids ended up dying for this country. And they had exceptions in place. So one was college deferments. One was you could go to something like the National Guard, National Reserves, which would allow you to do service, but it would be in the United States. And the third was you had some sort of medical condition that you could not go to war because of. And so there was actually also a test at one point that if you took it and scored well on it, you got a deferment. Now, again, we don't have the draft, but those issues, because a lot of people now I've heard in the past, over the past years, like we should institute a draft because it shouldn't just be poor people or, people who don't have a lot of resources going to fight for this country, because one of the few options they have out of where they are, whether it's poverty or rural America, it's a way out. It's a way to get out of your situation, make money, and hope that you don't have to go to war. The reality is that they can't change the draft to actually make it more equal unless there are absolutely no exceptions. And even then, the wealthy and the rich would be able to get away with not having to have their sons and or daughters go to war, because they always have a way, because money talks. And so there is no, I've looked at the research. It's not going to work. It hasn't worked in the past. 80% of the people that fought in Vietnam were the working poor, were poor or working families, and they were also particularly men of color. So I don't think for a second anything is going to be able to change a system that is, when there's the ability to, because you have money, get out of it. It's sort of like abortion, folks. Right? People are willing to make all these laws in these states, but it won't impact the very wealthy, because if daughters want an abortion, they'll just put them on a plane and fly them somewhere to get an abortion. It is impacting the poor and the working class women who can't afford to go someplace else to get an abortion if they live in Texas or Florida or Alabama or any of those backward states. So It's the same thing. Money makes a difference in everything, including the draft. The military doesn't want a draft, so people should know that. They prefer to have a volunteer army. And even Bozo, Trump, thinks it would be ridiculous to start the draft again. Obviously, I offer no guarantees. I just think that because it's never met kind of this idea of being equal, that it will not go back into place. That's my thinking. I hope I'm right. That's all I can say. I hope I'm right. Because I know a lot of people would pack their bags and get the fuck out if they thought that their sons had to go into a war like this one. And now I want to talk about Epstein because there's a couple of developments today. One is the Zorro Ranch is actually being searched as we speak. They likely won't find a lot within the building itself, though you never know. But they are also searching the grounds for remains. Whether we'll have to just wait and see as to what they find. And now this is going to lead me to the next part of this conversation, which I'm going to go back to what I talked about yesterday, because this is the first time Zorro Ranch has ever been searched. Ever. That's like mind-fucking boggling, right? I mean, I've seen some of the files where there are handwritten notes taken by somebody talking to, I don't know how old she was at the time, whether she was a girl, or a teenager, whatever, or a woman. But she described being at Zorro Ranch. Yet nobody, and that's in the Epstein files, nobody has ever stepped foot inside that from law enforcement. That is ridiculous. They also didn't even go to Epstein's Island before he died. And neither, not in that investigation or in the one earlier in Palm Beach. So my question and my thinking is this, and this is kind of like I said, piggybacking off on what I said yesterday, and that is the FBI and the CIA. I can only imagine that it is within those agencies where this behavior of protecting pedophiles, of allowing things to continue. We know that the CIA indulged in some of this themselves. I'm not as clear as to what, other than when Hoover was around, what was going on with Hoover. But how did these glitches happen? The only way they could have happened is if people within the FBI and the CIA were somehow part of it. Like a really institutionalized part of this. That this was a way for the CIA to get information on foreign people, foreign leaders, people in the government. The same thing with the FBI. As long, it's the same kind of thing. They were blackmailing all along the line since the 30s and up. But there must be somebody or someone's in the FBI and CIA, the intelligence community is basically what I'm saying, that has been a part of this. And it's, continued on through the years. That's my thinking. Especially after I heard once again that Zorro Ranch had never been searched. That doesn't make any sense. And I'm not for a second impugning all FBI or all CIA, but something is not right. Above and beyond all these rich and powerful elite people, there's got to be an institutionalized part of what happened with Epstein and before. So that's just off the top of my head. I was thinking about that today. And finally, the Iran war. I said yesterday that I didn't believe the numbers that they were giving out. Today, they came out with new numbers. So we've now gone from eight people who have lost their lives to now they're saying they have 140 injured, wounded Americans, 8 of whom are critical. And, supposedly giving us an update. I don't believe that number either. You don't go from this to now we've got 140 or 150. When did that happen? We should be getting updates as to what's happening and how many every fucking day. And we're not. And that's a disgrace. And I will also say about this war in Iran, I believe that Israel is literally committing suicide as a nation. They are losing people. They've lost me. I don't want another dime to go to Israel. And I believe the Israeli government, just like our government, is evil. And I am not talking about the Israeli people. I'm not talking about Jewish people. I am purely responding to the Netanyahu's government, who is celebrating. He said something, I've waited 40 years for this. And, he's approached every American president with this during his time of power. And nobody would do this except for dumbass Trump, because he, I'm sure, told him how great and wonderful he was and what a hero he would be if he was able to pull this off. Well, I think Trump is finding out not so. Although he probably, at this point, I don't know what is real to him and what is not real to him. He said there were people walking on the side of the road, or they got bombed on the side of the road, and they were walking down the road without arms and legs. So I don't know his mental state at the moment. But anyway, this is a disaster on every fucking level. And I'm really done with hearing some of these pundits like asshole Joe Scarborough say, well, they've done a great job. Nobody's going to criticize the military for the operations and what they're doing. You're kidding me, right? The first thing they did was kill 165 people in a school. Most of them were 7 to 12 years old and girls. This is how you think it is a great job? He tried to cover that by saying, oh, well, there are always tragedies. Yes and no. Okay? We're supposed to be more sophisticated in our technology to have these things not happen. So, what we're doing, we're creating more enemies from every generation against Americans because of this kind of behavior. We're not seen like in World War II when they cheered us coming through the streets of Paris. That's not this. And I think it's disgusting and disgraceful, and I think Israel is really, really going to regret this, because I know I am not alone in my saying no more money for arms to Israel ever again. No. They do not deserve it. That government has got to change just like ours. It's just as corrupt. It's just as evil. And look where we are when these two evil men got together, and look how many people are going to lose their lives. And there will be no regime change. There will be no, freeing the Iranian people. And it's like we just can't possibly learn from our mistakes. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that that's what I wanted to cover today. It's my thinking. I really would appreciate your thoughts. And I really, really, folks, if you could help me grow my channel, I would really appreciate it. I've used really about 100 times tonight. Okay, thank you. Take care.